Call to order the Brentwood Board of Aldermen meeting for April 16th of 2018. If you'd all rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Alderman Demmett.
Here.
Alderman Plufka.
Here.
Alderwoman Sims.
Here.
Alderman Wagey.
We changed the order. Here.
Alderman Leahy.
Brandon, can you hear? Yeah. He's here.
Can you hear?
Can you hear that?
No, that was Andy.
That was Andy Leahy.
Oh, Leahy or Wagey?
No, he said Weggy.
I thought it was Leahy.
Leahy first and then Waggy.
But they haven't
Gotcha.
got there yet.
No, she was doing
Changed
it.
the order also.
Yeah.
It's alphabetical.
She's doing it a different
We
way.
usually call in alphabetical order. If you can.
It's okay.
Okay, I can do it. Alderman Demmett.
Here.
Alderman Kramer.
Present.
Alderman Leahy.
Here.
Alderman Lockmiller.
Here.
Alderwoman O'Neill.
Here.
Alderman Plufka.
Here.
Alderwoman Sims.
Here.
Alderman Wagey.
Here. Check 1 2. Kevin, is my mic dead? Check 1 2. Check 1 2. Is it not dead? Oh, okay. I can't hear it. That's fine. If y'all can hear it, we're good. All right. Item number 3 on the agenda is approval of tonight's agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda? Alderman Leahy.
Your Honor, we'll ask that we postpone the installation of the re-elected officials because the certification from St. Louis County did not come in a timely manner. So if we may postpone that till May 5th, I think is our meeting,
May 7th.
May 7th.
Second?
Moved and seconded that we postpone the certification and swearing in. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any other corrections to the agenda this evening? Is there any objection to approval by acclamation as amended? Seeing none, it'll be so approved. Item number 4 is the consideration and approval of the minutes of the April 2nd meeting. Do we have any changes to the minutes? Any objection to approval by acclamation? Seeing none, they will be so approved. Item number 5, we have no presentations this evening. Number 6, we have several proclamations. Hopefully Alderman Kramer has a full pitcher of water at his desk because I'm going to ask him to read all 3 of them. The first one is a day that we all know and love. It's Arbor Day, and it's our Arbor Day proclamation. So Alderman Kramer, if you would.
Yes, sir, I'd be happy to. This is the Arbor Day proclamation, and whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for the planting of trees. And whereas this holiday, called Arbor Day, was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska, and Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and the world. Whereas trees reduce the erosion of our precious topsoil by wind and water, cut heating and cooling costs, moderate the temperature, clean the air, produce oxygen, and provide habitat for wildlife. And whereas trees are a renewable resource, giving us paper, wood for our homes, fuel for our fires, and countless other wood products. And whereas trees in our city increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of business areas, and beautify our community. And whereas trees, wherever they're planted, are a source of joy and spiritual renewal. And whereas the city of Brentwood has been recognized as a Tree City USA by the National Arbor Day Foundation and desires to continue its tree planting policies and practices. So I, Mayor Christopher Thornton, do hereby proclaim April 27th, 2018 as Arbor Day in the city of Brentwood and urge all citizens to celebrate Arbor Day and to support efforts to protect our trees and woodlands, and further urge all citizens to plant trees to gladden the heart and promote the well-being of this and future generations. In recognition of the Arbor Day proclamation.
All right, thank you. I got to tell you, I've driven through Nebraska several times, and I must have missed those 1 million trees. I don't know. It must be parts I'm not getting to. I don't know. All right, Arbor Day, get out and plant a tree. I just want to take this opportunity to commend Eric and the rest of the staff on what a great job they've been doing with the trees at the urban forest. I got to tell you, our trees have never looked better. I know that this board voted approximately a year ago to spend a decent amount of money on what I would call deferred maintenance of that urban forest, but it's really starting to show results, and I just think that staff has done a great job of implementing that plan and getting it done. So, thanks very much. Proclamation numero dos is.
Good job.
Local Government Week. Local Government Week this year is April 29th to May 5th, and so if you haven't gone out and done your shopping for aldermen or city staff, feel free. Alderman Kramer, take it away.
Sure, Your Honor. In recognition of Local Government Week, whereas local governments in Missouri make important decisions that affect the lives of all Missourians, and whereas local governments are the level of government closest to the people, and whereas local governments include city councils, county commissions, school boards, among others, and whereas local governments are the ultimate expression of grassroots democracy, and whereas local governments play an essential role in the quality of life in Missouri communities, now therefore I, Christopher Thornton, Mayor of the City of Brentwood, do hereby proclaim April 29th through May the 5th, that week of 2018, as Local Government Week in the City of Brentwood of St. Louis County, and urge all Missourians to join in recognizing the local governments as they serve their communities.
All right, thank you. And finally, we have Municipal Clerks Week, and that is also this April 29th to May 5th. So if you haven't had a chance, go grab your local municipal clerk and give them a hug. Alderman Kramer, take it away.
Yes, Your Honor. In recognition of Municipal Clerks Week, whereas the Office of Municipal Clerks and a time-honored and vital part of local government and exists throughout the world, and whereas the Office of the Municipal Clerk is the oldest among public servants, and whereas the Office of the Municipal Clerk provides the professional link between the citizens, the local governing bodies, and agencies of government at other levels, and whereas municipal clerks have pledged to be over-mindful of their neutrality and impartiality, rendering equal service to all. And whereas the municipal clerk serves as the information center on functions of local government, and whereas municipal clerks continually strive to improve the administration of the affairs of the office of the municipal clerk through participation in education programs, seminars, workshops, and the annual meetings of their state, county, and international professional organizations. Whereas it is most appropriate that we recognize the accomplishments of the Office of the Municipal Clerk, now therefore I, Christopher Thornton, Mayor of the City of Brentwood, do hereby recognize the week, April 29th through May 5th, 2018, as Municipal Clerks Week, and further extend appreciation to our municipal clerks and to all municipal clerks for the vital services they perform and their exemplary dedication to communities they represent.
All right, thank you. And I just had a text from Gina. Apparently flowers and cash are also acceptable. So that,
Yes.
yeah. Right. Public hearing. I don't think we have any public hearings this evening, nor do we have any bids. Item number 9 on the agenda is the hearing about any matter of public interest upon the request of any person present. If you'd care to come forward and address the Board of Aldermen, please come to the microphone, state your name and address, and you'll have at least 3 minutes to speak. Mrs. Smith beat you to the jump. Go ahead.
Thank you. Karen Smith. I live at the Harrison Motel. I want to thank you all. I believe you are going to be deciding tonight on an ordinance to prohibit Airbnbs and like in Brentwood. And I just want to comment that I know P&Z, as many of you know, has spent considerable time deliberating, looking at both sides, both allowing them with heavy regulations and then the prohibition. And as stated previously, I do support the prohibition. I think some of the language that's in the ordinance before you summarizes it very nicely as to what we are trying to achieve by having residential zoning and by establishing residential areas in our community. The ordinance by prohibiting tourist homes, bed and board facilities, or Airbnbs as a home occupation for the reason that a revolving door of transient guests who stay for short periods of time are wholly inconsistent with the notion of a residential neighborhood. It's recognized by courts the residential character of a neighborhood is threatened when a significant number of homes are occupied by permanent residents, not by permanent residents, but by a stream of tenants staying a weekend, a week, or even 29 days. The prohibition on short-term rentals also ensures access to the city's finite housing stock for those wishing to reside in the city full-time and contribute to the stability of the community. As someone that's lived across the street from one of these, I will, they do provide some instability to the neighborhood in that you don't have a consistent neighbors. At the PNZ, there were many individuals that stated that, people that stay at Airbnb spend money in our community, and but so do the homeowners. We support our schools, and I just think that the value of our homes as being a homeowner contributes greatly to the community, more so than Airbnb, is where the people are moving in and out. And the last thing I'd just ask you to consider is that if you would want your children living next door to these, where the people that are next door, they don't recognize and they don't know. A lot of people think, kind of the neighborhood that I live in, which is between high school and Brentwood, and tends to have a lot of the 2-bedroom, 1-bath homes are ideal for Airbnbs. But I've talked with many people about opportunities of buying and renting out as an Airbnb larger homes that even include those in York Woods. So there's lots of opportunity should you go down that route to spread the joy. It's not just my neighborhood that would be threatened by it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Trousdale?
Hi, Kurt Trostel, 8826 Pine Avenue. I want to second her motion of the desire to have prohibition of Airbnb. Put together a couple of things real quick. While not being across the street, we had one operating right next door to us. We had young children at the time, 5 and 7, 3 and 5. We'd have 3 and 4 people, tenants every week. We didn't know who these people were, so it was a concern for us. If our children were outside, we had to be out there watching them because we don't know who these people are. Additionally, inconvenience of the parking. Oftentimes we would have moving vans pull up in front, U-Hauls and the sort, because they just came in, they're moving somewhere, so we'd have very limited parking used up by large vehicles. We would get people knocking on our door thinking that we were the Airbnb, and this isn't just from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. This would happen at 10, 11 o'clock at night, 12 o'clock at night. We'd have someone knocking on our doors. Who's going to monitor these people? Are we equipped as the city of Brentwood? Do we have staffing that's going to monitor these people? Are they going to contribute? My understanding is no tax is collected by Brentwood from these Airbnb folks. So, who's paying for the oversight? We, the taxpayers, are that aren't getting any benefit from this. What else? We are hurting the Brentwood hotels. These are customers that are paying taxes to Brentwood, and we're allowing someone to circumvent our taxation policy because the owner wants to put a couple of extra dollars in their pocket because either they've purchased too much home or they own multiple homes, and this is a good way to offset their costs. That's not our problem. That's someone using poor accounting methods. And the number one issue that I have with it, as I said earlier, is you don't know who's sitting next door or living next door to you. They're very transient in nature. So a couple of things. This is from Airbnb's own website. Does Airbnb perform background checks on its members? If we have enough information, usually at least the user's first name and last name plus date of birth, to identify a guest who lives in the United States, we certainly check some databases of public, state, county criminal records, as well as state and national sex offender registries, if we have enough information. So that doesn't prevent someone from providing false information, or from the person that's renting the facility from being clean and their boyfriend or girlfriend, brother, sister, aunt, uncle is a sex offender, and there's no way that Airbnb is going to notice that. Another thing from Airbnb, the databases that we check are not necessarily complete and may not contain records of prior criminal conduct. Also, there's one in here, finally, oh, that's not it, sorry. They also make a wonderful statement where while we try to keep up to date with our criminal background checks, it is more than likely we will only provide or perform it the one time when they sign up. So it could be weeks, months, or even years if this customer or this person has been on Airbnb for a long time. And this is not just Airbnb, but I happen to pick on them because that was what was running next door. So they check you now, and 3, 5, 7 years down the road, who's to know what you are? They try, but they point out we may not and very well won't do that. Finally, you should never rely on background checks as a replacement for your own judgment about whom to interact with or allowed to state your facilities. I know that a lot of these Airbnbs and cities outside of ours, they're allowing it, you don't have to be present. You can just buy a house, put it on Airbnb, and let it pay for itself. So who's monitoring this? Who's monitoring, these people that are there? The homeowners are not monitoring it, so it's left up to the people around them to police it. How long did it take us, the city of Brentwood, to get out and finally can't stop the one next door? 4.5 years. Who's gonna police this? Nobody. Nobody's gonna police it. So, again, please let cooler heads prevail. With the exception of Maplewood, 5 of the surrounding communities have prohibited Airbnb and the like. We need to be the 6th. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else care to come forward and address the Board of Aldermen? Going once, going twice? Would any of the aldermen care to respond? I'm just going to say 2 things real quick. The first thing is I've got a lot of questions about this, so just by way of everybody having good information. We actually do not collect a hotel tax per se in the city of Brentwood. A couple of years ago, the state legislature decided that nobody who didn't already have a hotel tax could have one. And so we don't have one because we didn't have one when they made that prohibition. And that would be true whether the hotel facility is an Airbnb or whether it's the Durian or whether it's any place else in Brentwood. It's just, it was a moratorium, Kevin, for 4 years ago, something like that?
Around that, yes, sir.
Yeah. The second thing is that, with respect to city resources, and again, I'm only saying this because I get this question a lot, is, the truth of the matter is, this is a societal phenomenon that has caught the city off guard as well as most of the people. We're not staffed necessarily for a prohibition any more than we are to regulate these things. It's certainly, I think, in some sense easier to regulate a prohibition, perhaps, but from that perspective, I think the most important thing for the aldermen to consider is, as a matter of policy, what we would like to do, and then it's the job of the executive branch to figure out how to execute on that policy and make it happen. So, with respect to that, I would say that either way you go, the city has some work to do to enforce whatever policy the board chooses to put in place. All right. Item number 10 on the agenda, unfinished business. We do not have any that I'm aware of. Brandon, nope. We don't have any bills for a first reading this evening. We have 2 bills to be given second reading. Under 12A, we have bill number 6190. Mr. City Attorney, can we have the second reading by title only, please?
Mr. Mayor, before the second reading, the board has received updated documents which reflect the market actions on the securities today. And it would be in order to amend bill number 6190 and all related exhibits by the text of the materials distributed to the board this evening prior to second reading.
The chair would entertain a motion to make such an amendment.
So moved. Second, Your Honor.
All right.
Can I
it's
ask a
moved by-
question? Is the information contained on this financing summary? This is the information itself?
That's a summary of the information. The bill, for instance, on, if you look at bill number 6190, page 3, section 6, has specific data on the numbers from the transaction, as do the exhibits. And there's a number of other places where this information has been filled in as a result of the market activities.
Okay.
Yeah, so you have a red line copy that was at your seat that is redlined to reflect the actual numbers. The one-page exhibit you have in front of you is the same information, but in a summarized form.
It's informative, it's not part of the legislation.
Right, it's not a part of the bill per se, it's just, it's a summary of the changes that have been made. It's hard to see because there aren't that many places where it's been redlined, but
It's also black lines.
yeah, it's black lined, sorry.
Okay. I think I have, maybe I have 2 of the old. I'm just struggling to see where you're,
If you,
you said page 3,
if you look at bill number 6190.
right?
In the upper left corner, there's a strike-through portion.
Yeah.
That's the black line.
I don't have that on either
But
one.
no, look at the second one down.
What second one? This here?
There's 2 versions of the bill. One is clear, The one is black.
Right, under, there we go.
If you have one with two versions of bill number 6190.
Right on top should be. I don't think I do. Oh, I do now. There it is. Thank you.
That's the red line.
Thank you.
And
Sorry.
that packet is red line throughout.
Okay. I'm now on the same page, as it were. Sorry.
All right, so I've got a motion by Alderman Dimmitt, seconded by Alderman Leahy, that we amend the text of Bill 6190 pursuant to the changes exhibited in the red line version, or the black line version, as it were, and that thereby making the bill the clean version that everybody has a copy of, if I'm not mistaken.
Together with all exhibits referenced.
Together with all exhibits, references, et cetera, et cetera. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor of so amending the bill, say aye, please.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Seeing none, the bill will be so amended. Mr. City Attorney, could we have the second reading of the bill as amended, please?
Bill number 6190, second reading and consideration for adoption. An ordinance authorizing the city of Brentwood, Missouri to enter into a lease purchase transaction, the proceeds of which will be used to pay costs of the Manchester Renewal Project, and authorizing the execution of certain documents and actions in connection therewith.
All right, Chair would entertain a motion to perfect.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Alderwoman O'Neill, seconded by Alderwoman Sims. And,
Would you like a synopsis?
yeah, I would, actually.
For the
I'm going to
last.
first, before we start our discussion on the bill, actually, I'm going to ask Alderman Kramer to read the synopsis, and then I'm going to ask Jim Leahy to come up and present the summary of the financial information, because you don't want to have to go through 100 pages of stuff to pull out all the particular figures. So go ahead, Alderman Kramer, with the synopsis.
Yes, Your Honor, a little bit of a Cliff Notes version of Bill number 6190, the 2018 Series Certificates of Participation, otherwise known as a COP. The city of Brentwood, Missouri desires to enter into a lease purchase transaction and borrow $42,930,000. These proceeds will be used to pay for the cost of the Manchester Renewal Project. There are three parts to the Manchester Renewal Project. Number one, Deer Creek flood mitigation. The Deer Creek flood mitigation project involves the planning, design, and construction of improvements to the Deer Creek Channel, starting from the existing Metro facility to the Union Pacific Railroad crossing in Maplewood. To address the ongoing flooding problems located along Deer Creek between Brentwood Boulevard and Hanley Road, the city of Brentwood proposes a project constructed to protect affected properties from the 100-year floodplain and more frequent flooding. Manchester Road Improvements is the title of number two. The Manchester Road Improvements is a Missouri Department of Transportation MoDOT project that consists of 1.5 miles of pedestrian and vehicular improvements to Manchester Road within the city limits of Brentwood. The project will consist of a mill and overlay of the existing asphalt pavement, replacement of the existing concrete gutter with curb and gutter, partial access and management of existing business entrances, and pedestrian improvements to sidewalks, pedestrian signals, and pedestrian crossings. In conjunction with the MoDOT project, the city of Brentwood is acquiring additional right-of-way space to improve the appearance and use of the Manchester corridor. Finally, number three, titled Great Rivers Greenway, the GRG Deer Creek Connector. The GRG Connector is approximately 0.60 mile extension of the existing Rogers Parkway Trail to the Great Rivers Greenway District's GRG Deer Creek Greenway. The GRG Connector will connect to a newly constructed below-grade tunnel. The trail will continue south along the west side of Mary Avenue to Norm West Park. Continuing south past Norm West Park, users will then utilize approximately 1,200 feet of pedestrian bridge to traverse over the Union Pacific Railroad and Deer Creek, terminating at a trailhead along the Deer Creek Greenway. The project involves the planning, design, and construction of a connection between the city of Brentwood's Rogers Parkway and the Great Rivers Greenway, the Deer Creek Greenway. This is language contained inside Bill number 6190.
All right, thank you. And as promised, I am going to ask Jim Leahy to come up and present the data on the pricing that took place this afternoon.
Good evening, everybody. When we last met 2 weeks ago, the next day, the financing team took steps to finance the offering document, known as a preliminary official statement. And once we did that, we printed it, posted it, and we began the marketing of the certificates. And as the mayor just indicated, it concluded today actual interest rates and actual numbers that I think you have summarized in front of you. What we do is we've been talking to our salesmen. Our salesmen have been talking to various customers, purchasers, potential purchasers of the certificates. And today, we actually start a formal order period where beginning this morning at 10:15, we actually took orders from people. Prior to that, it's a matter of guessing what we think the interest rates would be. But starting at 10:15, we actually take orders. And we take orders for each maturity of the bonds. The maturities go from 2019 out through 2043. In the summary, I'll just go through it quickly and certainly answer any questions that you have. But the par amount, so how many certificates were sold, the exact par amount was $43,390,000. And you might wonder, how do we get that number? And I think there was a question last 2 weeks ago that we would size the bonds, or I keep doing it, certificates. We'd size the certificates based on the annual debt service, the annual net debt service that would be available for these certificates, the 2018 certificates, as well as the 2014 and 17 certificates, as well as the capital leases. So that's what drove, along with the interest rates, that's what drove how many bonds, how many certificates we would actually be able to include in this issuance. So we have $43,390,000 is the par amount. The number 2 says net reoffering premium. Well, let me explain that a little bit. Part of what we're doing as an underwriter here is we're matching market interest in each of these certificates. So what that means is, you're all familiar with an interest rate. We refer to them in our business as a coupon. That's the terminology that it is. And so as you typically would go out from 2019 to 2043, kind of makes sense that the coupon or the interest rate would go up over time. I think we've talked about this in the past. If you bought a certificate that was going to mature in 1 year, you would expect it to have a lower interest rate than one that goes out 20 years, because we don't know what market conditions would be. And that's typically how the market works. In this case, we're trying to get the best result for the city, the lowest cost of borrowing, and in this case, size the issuance as large as we can to give your project fund, to make your project fund what you want it to be. And so when we take, some of the purchasers wanted to buy bonds, were willing to buy them at a discount. So they would only pay 97 cents on a dollar, or 98 cents on a dollar. Many of the purchasers, in fact, most of the purchasers, were willing to pay a premium for the certificates. So in other words, instead of paying a dollar for a certificate, they would pay something greater than a dollar, $1.02, $1.04. In fact, it went all the way up to $1.09, if that makes sense.
Wow.
Yeah, so to give you an idea, because I think it is interesting, as long as I've been doing this, I find it interesting, what drives the market. So if the certificates that matured, for example, in 2026, were at a price of $1.09. I think that's kind of interesting. In 27, $1.08. 28, $1.08, and then it starts to go down, $1.07 in 2029. And then by the time it got out to 2035, they were buying them at a discount. When it was all said and done, we have premium, so we have more proceeds, another $458,408. So we have, how much money do we have? We have the $43,390,000 plus another almost $500,000. And now, what are we going to do with that money? Well, the first thing we do is put it into the project fund, which is $39,225,000. Where's the rest of the money going? So I'm going to skip around a little bit here. The rest of the money is going, we create a debt service reserve fund, and that reserve fund stays there as long as these certificates are outstanding through 2043. That was $3,199,645. It's 0.7 in that summary. There were costs associated with doing the issuance. Those costs are summarized in line 8. The underwriting costs, underwriter's counsel, certificates disclosure counsel, Cook and Riley cost, reimbursement to the city for payments to Navigate, PGAV, minor amount of certificate expenses and rating agency fees. Those were all the categories. That added up to $756,010, exactly. That's exactly the number. The other thing that I didn't list on here, and I probably should have and could have, there's another $667,000, I'll call it $667,753, and that's capitalized interest. We did talk about that last time, where the city is not going to have any debt service to pay in 2018. We've built it into this issuance. So we have the interest already taken care of. So the first debt service payments the city would realize would be in 2019, okay? So again, point 5, let me go back up to point 4. I mentioned this. So the coupons ranged from 3% to 4%, and the actual yields were 185 to 375. Again, I want you to understand that. It is a little confusing if you don't deal with these things every day. The reason you might say, wow, the interest rates went from 3 to 4, how can the yields be less than the interest rates? It's, remember, they're paying a premium, okay? So that's why. So in the early year, for example, the coupon was 3%, the yield was 185, that's the lowest one there. And they paid a price, they paid 101.6. That's the math of it all, in case you were wondering about that. I mentioned about how we sized it based on the annual debt service, including not only this issuance, but all the others. Another important point is item 6. I'm really pleased with this result. Typically, bond issues like this, certificate sales, have a 10-year call provision. In this case, we were fortunate, I believe, to have these bonds callable in 6 years with a little bit of a premium, okay? The tax law changed at the end of last year, and one of the many changes to the tax law is that you cannot advance refundings. So I think some of the aldermen have asked me, when could we refund these certificates? And the answer is, absent some change to the law, the absent is beginning on October 1st of 2024. Okay? And with a premium. In October 1st of 2025, that premium would go from 102 to 101, and by 26, it would be even par. So that's 8 years. So I think that's I really do believe that's a very good result there. The certificates would close, assuming everything is approved this evening. We would with Gilmore and Bells, obviously they have the lead on this. They would begin to finalize all of the documents, prepare for closing. The money would be in the bank, so to speak, with the trustee on April 30th. So.
Thank you very much, Jim. And I'd just like to mention that if you have anybody else who wants to buy $1 for $1.09, I have several dollars for sale. I can probably get more if you have more buyers, so.
I understand.
But no, seriously, if anybody has any quick questions, I know I don't want to turn this into questions and answers, but I do want you to understand what we're doing here.
Well, can I just ask a question about that? I mean, what is the phenomenon that allows that premium you're talking about in the short term?
Some of the purchasers want a stated coupon. Okay, they want it. Okay, they want 3% or they want 3.5%.
Right.
Maybe it's a fund. Maybe it's an institute. I probably should have said that. But who are the buyers of these bonds? The buyers of these bonds are individuals like us in the room this evening. They're also banks. They're funds. They're large institutions. That's who buys the bonds.
Okay.
So they all have different interests. Some of them want that coupon. So,
And it's the interest in the coupon that drove the price above the dollar.
yeah.
Huh. Okay, thank you.
Alderman Dibbitt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I understand, is this, in layman's terms, is this kind of like just refinancing the other debt that we had?
No, sir. This is all what we would refer to as a new money issuance. The certificate issue that we did earlier, late last year, I should have said, in end of 2017, that was a refunding.
Okay.
But this is not. This is all new money.
So all this money is going to be earmarked for the Manchester renewal?
Yes,
None
sir.
of it has to be used to pay off any of the other existing debt?
No, sir, it will not be.
Okay.
No.
In fact, we may be prohibited from doing
I
that.
was just going to, that was going to be my next question.
I haven't read the full indenture, but, yeah.
Okay. That's all I had.
All right, thank you very much, Jim.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, so did we get, it was moved by Alderman O'Neill, seconded by Alderwoman Sims, that we perfect Bill number 6190 in ordinance form. Discussion is now appropriate. Alderman Leahy.
Thank you, Your Honor. I believe that the project that we're invoking on is a worthwhile project, and that Manchester Road does need help to develop and to solve the flooding. My problem is my conservative nature. This brings in the $43 million for us to work towards, but it does not cover the full gross value of the potential work that we're looking at and the cost. And I do believe that it would be ill-advised of the board to start building a house without knowing how you're gonna fully pay for it. And since we haven't, and I think we do need to go to the voters to get their permission to bring in the missing parts of the funding, I think we should make that the primary issue first. So for that, I'm not in favor of passing this bill at this time, but I do understand the necessity of fixing Manchester Road.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Alderman Plufka.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I very much respect Alderman Leahy's point of view on this, and I do feel as well that that we are taking on with this. I mean, I realize there's this ability within a certain period of time, excuse me, that 6-year window that we could, a future board could change its mind or change course. And I think that's really the point that I want to make. I think Alderman Leahy's analogy is good only to a certain point. Because it's only a good analogy if you consider the fact that there are many groups of owners of this house. We're not the only owners of the house. And that this is planning for the future of this city, and this is what we were elected to do. I know that when I campaigned, one of the things that I spoke to people in Ward 1 about was the woeful state of Manchester Road, and the fact that since Brentwood's inception, there's been almost no attention paid to that corridor with regard to any sort of redevelopment. And it was pointed out to us on many occasions that it's impossible to fix. Well, here is a plan, a very credible plan, to not only pull 30-plus acres out of the floodplain and redefine it as more developable, but it is a way to connect us to the Great River Greenway, and it is a way for us to improve on the streetscape look of Manchester Road and accomplish all of this in the next 5 to 7 years. I think this is precisely the kind of thing we were elected to try and do. And I think the issue with regard to debt comes down to this, this is not precise math, it's just sort of a general way to think about it. If you factor in the Cook and Riley estimates as to the enhancement of sales tax revenue brought in by both the Meridian and by Hanley Station once those TIFs expire or are completed within the next 5 years, what we're talking about is, can the city of Brentwood afford to finance an additional $800,000 to $900,000 of debt service and at the same time accomplish these three things, or at least, to Alderman Leahy's point, bring us down the road with regard to those things. And I'm a firm believer that, to his point with regard to the incompleteness of this, that I think future boards are going to figure this out. They're going to take the lead from this effort, and they're going to make good decisions based on what that track record experience has been and is going to be over the next decade or so. And if they decide to make a change in direction, it'll be because something that we can't predict right now has occurred. But I think given the situation where we're at right now, the opportunity that we have before us, not only from the standpoint of the financial situation, but also what we are, I think, mandated to try to accomplish as a body, I think this represents a terrific opportunity for the city, and I'm really in favor of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion? Alderman Lockmiller.
Could I just ask a question of Alderman Leahy?
Sure.
is your concern, are you looking for additional tax revenue to cover that difference? Or are you looking for the citizens to weigh in on the project?
As, as the project currently lays out, we have designed it from Brentwood Boulevard over to Handley to work it through. If we come up short on funding, we are in the middle of a project and now have to scale it back to make it affordable. I think we should get the voters in past history telling us this is important to get done, to get them on board, get the sales tax that would help fill the missing portion of the funding of this project, and then come in with the bonds. Thus, we could then proceed and cover the full scope of the project instead of having to possibly restructure it and shrink it in size to make it affordable. And I think the voters would think better of us if we looked ahead and addressed that issue before we started moving dirt, not afterwards. That's why I'm just conservative in nature. I think it's well worth doing, because it's never gonna get fixed if we never do it. But I think we do need to cover all the bases, and money is a big base.
So you're saying we would borrow the additional funds off in the beginning?
No, you would get the voters' permission to pass and incorporate the economic sales tax. That would bring in the rest of the money that the borrowing that you're doing here and the potential grants that we can get from the other cooperative parties makes the project fully funded. As it is, you have $40 million for a $72 million project. I still have to fill in that $30 million gap. That's economic sales tax. Does that, the grants bring in another $3 to $6 million, depending on who's going to be generous and participate with us. That's where we have to make everything work. If you go to the voters and they tell you that they're not anxious to do the sales tax, you either have to go back repetitively or rescope your project and shrink it in size. I think we should know that before we go borrow money. That's why I'm asking for that to be done first.
Okay, thanks.
Alderman Dimmitt.
I would just simply add that, this is obviously a large project, conceivably the largest that the city has ever entertained. And it's difficult at this point in time for us to know the exact number.
Yep.
We've discussed that. It could be 73 million, it could be 63 million. We're not really going to know until we get in there and we start getting further along down the road. I think this is the fastest way to get moving on this. I think this is something that we need to do. This is a project that has been screaming out to this city for years and years and years. And at our Ways and Means Committee, there are a lot of reasons to do this, one of which is possible economic benefit.
Yes.
And we've been looking at this at the Ways and Means Committee. We've been looking at the revenue. We've been looking at the expenditures. And there are 4 truths that we have come up with. And you probably know a number of them, if not all of them. The first is the general fund. The revenue, 75% of that revenue comes from taxes.
Yes.
Not just sales tax, but taxes. The second truth is those taxes are flat, if not beginning to decline. The third truth is that on the expenditures in the general fund, the vast majority of those expenditures are on salaries and benefits. And the fourth truth is the salary and benefits continue to increase every single year. Our revenues not, our expenditures are. At some point in time, we're going to have some very, very difficult decisions to make. I would much rather address those decisions now from a position of strength than later from a position of weakness. And if we can get moving on this project and get this thing down the road, I think we're going to have a lot more information to give us, to make those decisions. How do we go about this? Do we continue? Do we scale back? Do we look at some other source of funding? But we're never going to be able to do that unless we get moving on this thing. And I think we need to start it tonight.
Any further discussion? Alderman Wagey?
Nope, just going off mute to get ready.
All right, seeing no further discussion, I'll call for a roll call, please. A vote yes is to vote in favor of passing the Bill 6190 and issuing the certificates of participation. A vote no is to not do that. Roll call, please.
Alderman Demmett,
Yes.
Alderman Kramer,
Yes.
Alderman Leahy,
No.
Alderman Lockmiller,
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill,
Yes.
Alderman Plufka,
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims,
Yes.
Alderman Waggy.
I count seven to one, so the bill, the motion to perfect passes, the bill is approved.
Bill number 6190 as amended passes and upon signature of the mayor becomes ordinance number 4830.
All right, thank you. Item 12B is Bill number 6191. Mr. City Attorney, could we have the second reading by title only, please?
Bill number 6191, the second reading and consideration for adoption. An ordinance amending certain sections of Chapter 400 in order to clarify the current zoning prohibition of short-term rental on dwelling units in the A, B, AR, MR residential zoning districts and the UD urban development zoning district.
Alderman Kramer, do you have a synopsis, please?
I do, Your Honor. Bill number 6191, the text amendments to continue the prohibition of short-term rentals in the residential districts, urban development district, and the UD district here in the city of Brentwood, case number 18-01. Short-term rentals are defined as rentals of dwelling units for typical periods of less than a month. Currently, the city's zoning code does not specifically define short-term rentals. However, since short-term rentals are not permitted by right and do not comply with the city's occupancy permit program, short-term rental operations have been prohibited. Our Public Works Committee requested the Planning and Development staff propose text amendments to Chapter 400, the zoning ordinance, to clarify the current prohibition of the operation of short-term rentals in our city. New definitions are proposed for short-term rentals, transient guests, and vacation rentals, which would be added to the definition section. The home occupation provision would be amended to prohibit short-term rentals, boarding houses, bed and breakfasts, hotels, and similar facilities. The district regulations for each residential zoning district and the UD district would be amended to clarify that quote-unquote residential use does not include short-term residential use by transient guests, for example, short-term rentals. Lastly, additional language concerning occupancy permits would be added to clarify that short-term rentals cannot qualify for an occupancy permit. At the March 14th Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, the commission at that time voted 3 in favor, 4 opposed on the bill prohibiting short-term rentals. This bill prohibiting short-term rentals then comes to our Board of Aldermen for consideration with an unfavorable recommendation to approve from the commission. Language is found in Bill number 6191.
All right, thank you. Chair would entertain a motion to perfect.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Alderman Lockmiller, seconded by Alderwoman Sims. Perfection of Bill 6191. Is there any discussion? Alderman Dimmitt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As this board knows, I was on planning and zoning for 10 years prior to being elected as alderman. And one thing that I learned while serving on P&Z is, among many of the others, is that there's a reason that we have zones in this city. We have residential zones, we have commercial zones. And the reason for that is pretty obvious. We've made a decision that we will permit certain uses in certain areas of this city. In residential areas, we decided it's for people to live permanently. You can't run a business out of a house in the residential areas. Why? Because we figure the neighbors don't want to live next to a house where you've got employees coming and going throughout the day. We don't allow short-term rentals for the very same reason. They're transient-type businesses. We decided that there's a place for those types of businesses, as in the commercial districts, hotels. You know, we've had a number of residents stand up and give some very compelling reasons why we should not be permitting these. And just by way of quick background, at Public Works, what we decided is we did not want to permit short-term rentals. And the problem that we were running into is that there was some ambiguity in the present code. So what we did is we asked staff to put together an ordinance that prohibited short-term rentals. Because of its nature, it had to go through planning and zoning. What came out of planning and zoning is they made a decision contrary to our directive. I think that what we should do is stick with the directive of Public Works, which is to prohibit these short-term rentals. Let's make it a little simpler for the city to enforce that, and because of that, I'm in favor of 6191.
Thank you. Alderwoman Sims.
Am I correct that at the most recent planning and zoning meeting, they revisited this issue and in fact reversed their March 14th position?
Actually, no. What they did, excuse me, so after they passed this bill on to the board with the recommendation of do pass, or do not pass, sorry.
Negative.
They took up a text amendment that would propose regulation. And that text amendment was discussed and voted do not pass and sent to the board. So that will actually be on our agenda in the coming couple weeks with a recommendation do not pass from the Planning and Zoning Commission. So it might seem that the action on the current ordinance of the Planning and Zoning Commission, which was recommended that we do not pass this one, which would prohibit, and the recommendation that we do not pass the other one, what would regulate, would seem to be inconsistent. And I think it's just due to the fact that there was a different number of members of the Planning and Zoning Commission at each of those meetings. That's what Chairman Daming has told me. So what's the recommendation of the Planning and Zoning Commission? Of the 7 members that were there on this particular evening, it is that we do pass, or do not pass this clarification. But on a similar bill that would give us regulation, they also voted that we do not pass that bill. Yeah?
Okay, but
I'm just full of negatives tonight. So the folks that voted in favor of do not pass this then wanted to propose regulation that they were hoping the board would adopt instead. But when the commission met on that topic, there were more commissioners present, and they voted that they not forward the regulation to the board, or forward it to the board with a do not pass recommendation.
so.
The
it's-
last action of the Planning and Zoning Commission is to recommend to this board that we do not regulate. If you want to interpret that as a prohibition, take it as such.
Is that a fair inference that since they didn't want to forward
Look, I'm
regulation,
not
perhaps-
going to talk circles. Look, I talked to Chairman Daming about this. Obviously, it's a bit of a divisive issue in town. Chairman Daming feels that if you were to poll the Planning and Zoning Commission, the majority, but not the overwhelming majority, but the majority sentiment on the commission would be to prohibit short-term rentals.
Okay, that was my.
But
I
again,
was-
that's not a
I
vote.
was
That's
seeking
not, that's
clarification on that.
unofficial, but that's what he's told me. Alderman Lockman.
I'm looking for a moment of clarity here. If,
You're in the wrong place, my friend.
since this is coming to us with an unfavorable rating, or unfavorable recommendation, and no vote would continue the prohibition.
So a vote in favor of the current ordinance, right? So a yes vote on this bill that's in front of us would be to clarify our ordinance to prohibit short-term rentals. A no vote on tonight's ordinance would be to leave our ordinance ambiguous as to short-term rentals. Further discussion? Seeing none, are we all clear on the votes? All right, roll call, please.
Alderman Demmett,
Yes.
Alderman Kramer,
Yes.
Alderman Leahy,
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller,
Yes?
Alderwoman O'Neill. Yes. Alderman Plufka.
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims.
Yes.
Alderman Wagey.
I count 8-0 in favor of the prohibition of short-term rentals.
Bill number 6191, as amended, passes, and upon signature of the mayor, becomes ordinance number 4831.
All right, and as I mentioned, folks, just to wrap that one up, we will have a text amendment coming from the Planning and Zoning Commission, I believe at our next meeting, if not the one after that, that will propose some regulation, and that will be coming with a recommendation of do not pass. So we'll deal with it when it shows up. Item number 13, we do not have any first and second readings. We don't have any resolutions this evening. Item 15, Alderman Demmett, the warrant list, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've had an opportunity to go over the warrant list with our Director of Finance, and I was able to get answers to all my questions, and accordingly, I would recommend approval of the warrant list in the amount of $408,511.01.
Second, Your Honor.
It's been moved by Alderman Demmett, seconded by Alderman Leahy, that we approve the warrant list in the amount stated in your packet. Is there any discussion?
I have one question.
Yes, sir.
So there are 3 sewer lateral repairs on the warrant list. So I guess my question is, I thought that the policy change that we put in place last month or a month or 2 ago, shouldn't those have been bid out no matter what? I guess I'm surprised to see them on there.
Okay, I think either Dan or Karen, can you answer that question? Or Alderman Demmett, do you know the answer to that question?
Sort of, but since Dan's up here, I'll let him.
Okay, go ahead. Nice passing of the buck, sir.
Duck and run.
Was the question, were they bid out or were they not bid out?
Were they bid out was his question. Why, were they bid out, were they not bid out?
If it's XL Contracting, those were already bid out. That's a on-call services that they provide. It's done by contract and by depth. So we've got a contract in place with them. I'm not sure who the bill was written out to, though.
XL Contracting. All
Okay,
three of
then
them.
that's correct, yes.
That's correct.
Yeah, we've got a 3-year contract with 2 one-year extensions, and it's still valid. So,
Are we still executing repairs?
are we still executing
When you
repairs?
say "we," Brandon, do you mean the city, or,
Yes.
oh, is the city still executing repairs?
If they're a carryover from 2017, then yes. And if it's a very simple one, like a clean out, there's no sense in getting a contractor involved.
Did you hear that, Brandon?
Yeah, I did, thank you.
Alderman Lockmiller?
So are these carryovers, is that why they exceed our cap?
Those are carryovers.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we have a list of 2017s that carried into 18 before the policy change.
And I just have a question as far as the budget. I'm sure you and Karen have this well under control, but we are keeping track of the funds
Yes.
that are coming out of that account as discussed. Yeah, okay. Any further questions on the warrant list? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Alderman Demmett.
Yes.
Alderman Kramer.
Yes.
Alderman Leahy.
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller.
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill.
Yes.
Alderman Plufka.
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims.
Yes.
Alderman Wakey.
Yes.
All right, I count 8-0 in favor of approval of the warrant list, so the bills will be paid for another month. Item number 16 is reports of committees and department heads. The first up is my report. I've got just a few quick things tonight. The first thing is I've been talking to you the last couple of weeks, I've been haranguing you with the last couple of meetings about going and voting for the Missouri Municipal League Innovation Award, and I'm proud to announce that I got a call last week, and we won. So we're second time in a row. The city of Brentwood has won the Municipal League Innovation Award. I encourage you all to come on down to Springfield. I think it's in Branson, actually. Branson this year in September.
Yep.
Come on down and enjoy a weekend in Branson and see us get the award. It'll be a lot of fun. Second is I want to throw a shout out to the Public Safety Committee and especially to Chief Joe Spees. We have reached an agreement in principle with the school district to fund a school resource officer. So we will have a full-time officer deployed in our schools and in partnership with the school district, and I think that's just an exceptional thing, and I couldn't be happier about that. Third thing is school-related as well. For those of you who don't know, Prop B, which is the school building funding plan, passed with a almost 90% approval rating. And I called Dr. Lane and I told him that I don't think if we had a provision to give away $100 bills that it would pass by 90%. So that's just phenomenal. And I'm really excited. According to him, the schedule is they're going into heavy design phase right now. They expect to be in heavy design phase until the end of the year. And then very early in the new year, they'll start preparing for serious construction. And they're going to really bust it over the summer and get most of the project completed next summer. So just fantastic. Really great to hear that. And I'm very happy for the school district. Fourth, May 7th is going to be the swearing in of the new officers. So those of you who are reelected, congratulations. We will have a swearing in ceremony and then there'll be a reception. I think what we'll probably, well, depending on how you all want to handle it, we can either break the meeting shortly for a reception and let everybody go, or we can wait till after the meeting. We're going to have a fairly long agenda next time, so we'll decide how to do that. But there will be a cake and cookies kind of deal going on. So if you want to just email Bola or me and let me know what your preference is on that one. Employee Appreciation Day in Brentwood is June 22nd. That's a Friday from 11 to 1. I believe we had it last year at Brentwood Park, and I think that's the plan. But with all the construction down yonder, it may be Memorial Park. I'm not sure.
Get down there, yes.
So yeah, you'll get a notice. But I would ask that I always make it a point to go, and this will be the first one I've missed. Unfortunately, I'm going to be in Spain. So I won't be at Employee Appreciation Day, but I'd like as many aldermen as can to go in my stead. It's a lot of fun. You play some washers, you have a couple sodas, a couple hot dogs. It's a good time. So if you can get out there for that on June 22nd, that'd be great. Finally, I want to thank the financial team for the work that they did. Karen and her group, Jim Leahy and his group, Mark Grimm and his group, and they're of course not here. They're out selling bonds right at the moment. But no, they really did a bang-up job on this issue. I'd like to just point out a couple of things about it because it really is, we really did do very well on this thing. The oversubscription premium that we got was nearly 60% of the cost of issuance. And that's free money, folks. I mean, that's money that came in over and above the par value on the debt. So that's phenomenal. In the complex paperwork I got a 4-foot-long spreadsheet. But when I went through it all, what I really was interested in is what's the effective interest rate once the fees and everything are included in. And I don't recall the exact numbers, but it's in the neighborhood of 3.7%. So, I mean, you know, the city just borrowed $43 million at 3.5 or 3.7% effective interest rate. That's really something. That speaks well to our financial team, how well they've done, and how well this board has managed things in the last few years. So I really congratulate all of them. I'm very excited. I think this is a very big step for Brentwood. To Alderman Leahy's point, I'm appropriately nervous. I think you'd have to be brain dead to not be nervous borrowing this amount of money. But I think that we have a plan that is solid, and I think there's a reasonable chance that God may smile upon this project and bring it in at less than what we're afraid of, than maybe more. So I just think it's a great opportunity to address a long-standing problem, and it's going to be a real benefit to our community going forward. And even if it isn't, it will have been a very, very worthwhile effort to try. And I think that's important. If you don't try, you can't get there. So thank you to this board for their support, and the team, like I said, the financial team just did a bang-up job. That's all I have. Public safety.
Public Safety meets on April 25th, 2018. We will hear additionally from our new Chief of Police with regard to some additional initiatives as he gets settled in his position. So I invite anybody that would like to come and attend that meeting. I believe it's at 5:30 in this room.
All right. Public Works, Alderman Lockmiller.
We met last week. We directed our Public Works Director to install a curb along Salem Avenue to curb some of the runoff that's coming off Salem down onto the backyards of Cecilia. Also, the committee heard from our our Parks Director on partnering with Clayton on a temporary dog park in Norm West Park. Clayton's is currently closed due to some MSD work, so if they're willing to buck up, we'd happily take on another temporary dog park down in Norm West. There's ongoing talks with Clayton right now. And then finally, under the guides of public safety, we decided, hopefully next year, to continue plowing private streets, snow plowing. And we're putting together a policy and a hold harmless agreement for those streets. Our next meeting is May 9th, right here at 4:30.
All right. Thank you. In your capacity as the Director of Planning and Development, would you care to make a report?
Yes, I would. At the April 11th Planning and Zoning Commission meeting last week, the commission adopted a resolution approving the comprehensive plan, Brentwood 2020, Vision for the Future. So they had a good, solid final draft that they passed the resolution on last week. We just have a couple of cleanup things on this version, but it will be available, will be uploaded to the city's website along with that resolution later this week. So,
Thank you. The new comp plan is finally here with us. I would encourage you all to go ahead and download that, read it at your leisure. We will have a presentation to the board of the final comp plan, but it may be as late as June before we actually have enough time in our schedule to get it. So, yeah, well, we got a couple of big meetings coming up in May, time-consuming stuff, so. And as you know, we go to one meeting a month, so the agendas don't get shorter come June, July, and August, so, yeah. All right, Ways and Means Committee, Alderman Dimmitt.
No report.
No report. Mr. City Attorney?
No report, sir.
Madam City Administrator?
so this-
Assistant City Administrator.
the city administrator provides a monthly report on expenditures for the Manchester Renewal Project. This report includes expenses or cost in 3 categories: investment cost, direct project cost, and also indirect or sunk costs. Investment costs are costs that can be recovered to a large extent if the project is not completed. There was a recent purchase of 8606 Manchester Road at a price of $131,267.32. Total spent today in investment costs is $297,472.80. Direct project cost, recently $75,000 was spent on CH2M for preliminary design studies for the Deer Creek flood mitigation, and $36,017.50 spent on Manchester Road improvement preliminary design along with property appraisals. So total spent in this category to date is $459,616.95. And then the third category of indirect or sunk cost, $17,083 was recently spent on project management costs along with several property surveys. Total spent to date is $237,521.39.
All right, thank you. I'd just like to follow up on that real quick. So I'm just doing some meatball math up here, and that's 7.6, 9 so 9.9, $100,000. So just for the board's enlightenment, you know, this is one of the reasons I think borrowing this money makes sense, is if you look at this, our total expenditures on this project over the last, year and a half, 2 years, primarily, has been about $1 million. And that's $1 million coming out of current budget. We haven't dipped in any reserves as we've done these things. You know, I believe, to Alderman Plufka's point earlier, I believe that the city can afford to spend about that level on this project, and by doing it with the debt service, we can afford to move forward at a much quicker pace than we might be able to just kind of plodding along with $1 million every year. So that's my commercial. Thank you very much. Madam Excise Commissioner?
No report.
Madam Library Liaison?
Yes, a couple issues. First, the position of adult services is unfilled. When Jenna became library director, there is a void. There have been 2 rounds of interviews with no good result, not a good fit. So the position has been rewritten, jobs have been changed so that there will not be a professional level requirement, no master's degree requirement, and they will keep searching for a good person to provide programming and adult services, but perhaps not with the degree requirement they had before. So they have hope. The other is that they are going to form a long-term study committee for planning for space. This month, the children's program had 40 young people. There was no spot to put 40 young people in that library. And they are paying the rec center for use of rooms over there. So they are looking for long-term plans, given the budget, what opportunities are there, and of course, city input is happily received.
Thank you. I have 2 things under the municipal league report. real quick, the conference that I was referring to, the MML conference, is September 17th through the 19th, which is actually the first part of the week after Brentwood Days. So if you are able to get away for those days, come on down to Branson. It'll be a good time. And then also, I've been alerted to a couple of different bills that are floating around the Capitol, and I'm sure you all are familiar with the taxing bills, but there's one that you may want to pay some special attention to regarding expansion of employee whistleblower protections. It's an interesting bill, and I'm certainly not against employee whistleblowing protections, but the text of the bill it has expanded the definition of protection to make it, put the burden of proof on an entity that would terminate an employee to prove that the termination was not retaliatory. Which I think might be a recipe for disaster. Anyway, if you have any interest in those things, or you talk to legislators on a regular basis, I would encourage you to have a look at that legislation, form your own opinion. But I thought it was very interesting point of view on that. Any announcements? Alderman Leahy.
Your Honor, I have three of them, if I may.
Go ahead.
The April Ward 3 meeting will be here on the 24th of April at 7 o'clock in the council room for anyone that would like to have informal discussions with the Ward 3 aldermen. On Friday of that week, the 27th of April, the Brentwood Parks and Recreation Department is hosting an American Red Cross blood drive from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. We are looking for donors. You can go on the American Red Cross website and get an appointment. We would very much like to have donors come in and participate. And then on May the 3rd, which I believe is a Thursday, is the National Day of Prayer. The city will be hosting a program at noon here in the council room, and all denominations are invited, and we'd love to have residents participate. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Any further announcements?
Yes, Mr.
Alderwoman
Mayor.
O'Neill.
Ward 4 meeting will be next Tuesday, the 24th, at 6 o'clock, preceding the Brentwood Forest Condo Association meeting. The condo board is looking forward to hearing our new police chief, and so we will have a brief meeting so that we can join and actually greet him too. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other announcements? Do we have any new business this evening? Okay. Item number 19 is the hearing of any matter upon the request of any person present. If anyone would like to come forward and address the board, come forward. You'll have at least 3 minutes to speak. Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Alderman Plufka, seconded by Alderwoman Sims, who's quick on the draw this evening. All in favor of adjournment, say aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? We will be adjourned.
So the close-